Hello everybody and welcome to the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. We're going to go ahead and invite some people to this live here before we get started. Jeff, you know who's supposed to be tagged.
Okay. I will tag them. Happy Tuesday. I don't know how happy it is, but it's Tuesday.
For some reason it feels like Wednesday.
Yeah, it does feel like a day's off. But I think for the last 3 months I felt that way.
Yeah.
Get those bare necessities. Somebody asked, they're like, how did you change the lighting and the background of your video so quickly? I was like, well, I'm not doing it in the same room. But it was kind of like a funny question. I was like, oh wow. I think Dave Roeder asked me that. He's like, didn't you have a bookshelf behind you?
Yep. We're in a different room.
And we have another room that we're in the process of figuring out, and that'll be the room where we can put up multiple backgrounds. Okay, and last one. Facebook, you really need to have a better way to do this. Try that.
Alrighty.
Andrew, what's up?
Alrighty.
This is here.
So
Morning.
let's get started. Today we're on the learning principle. We have been going over the book by John Maxwell, Winning with People. So like I said, today we're on the learning principle, and each person we meet has the potential to teach us something. And Louis Armstrong said there are some people that if they don't know, you can't tell them. So that's another way of saying, like, if the person's not ready to hear something, you can't tell them either. Some people, you have to get into a teachable mindset before you can accept the information. So you want to ask yourself, do I approach people with the desire to learn from them? So what's your attitude? All people fall into one of these categories. Number one, no one can teach me anything, the arrogant attitude. So this happens a lot with a lot of professionals, is they hit that point of success where they might be seen as the, what's the word? The expert. They might be seen as the expert in their field. So then what they end up doing, they're like, I don't need anybody else's opinion and there's nothing I can learn from you. But the problem is once you get to that point, and you stop learning, you stop growing. There's always a chance that you can learn something from someone, and it never stops. So someone can teach me everything, the naive attitude. You don't just want one mentor, you want multiple mentors, because you can't learn everything from just one person. Because certain people are better at different things in life. Some people might be really good at something in your career. Some people could be good at recruiting. And then other people have a family life that you may want to have as well. So it's never just one person. You got to look for other people that are going to be able to help you. Everyone can teach me something, the teachable attitude. So the only time people can't teach us things is when we're unwilling to learn. So not everyone will teach you something, but everyone has the potential to do so. So the biggest thing that I got out of this chapter, and we hear about this all the time at a lot of trainings that people do for MLM, is you want to have a teachable attitude and be teachable, which means you want to be open, but you have to be careful of who you take advice from. You really have to look at the other person and ask yourself, if I follow their advice, do I want their life? Do I want to have their career? The way that they're doing things, do I want what they have? If the answer is no, that is not the person to follow. And that's something you have to pay attention to. So when you're going out and working with people, you want to choose your mentors wisely, and you want people who are way, way above what you actually are able to do, and you want to start learning from those people and listening to those. Now, certain people do come up with good ideas when there's different marketing strategies. If we haven't tried it yet, and if somebody wants to go try something, and if it works, then we're totally okay taking people's advice and saying, you know what, that might be something that we can add. But they have to go do it first and prove that it's gonna work before you incorporate it into what you're doing. Hello, Nancy, how are you? So that's the biggest thing that I got out of this chapter, Jeff. I left off at how do you learn from others, and I will let you take it from there.
Yeah, I gotta find it in my thing. Questions. The trust question. Mutual trust. Where are we? I don't think I have it by chapters. The
No.
learning principle.
Yeah, you need to go up.
Confrontation. Belief. The number principle. Why didn't I number these? I don't know. Is this whether people like you? Charisma.
There, that's where you're at.
Holy mackerel. I skipped over the whole thing. Okay, so I know where I'm at. Nancy, good morning. Catherine, hello. Okay, so 5 steps. Making sure, make learning a passion. So if you want to help others, you're going to have to learn about them, but you also have to learn about yourself. Value people. People don't learn from people they don't value. So, you know, it's kind of like you have to value everybody. Everybody has something to give. It's amazing. Like, people, even with the lowest self-esteem, will be like, you know, I just don't have anything. I just don't know anybody. I just don't have anything to give. And they're great at something that, you know, you might not know about, but they're really good. And if you get to know people, you'll end up finding out what that thing is. Develop relationships with potential. Develop relationships with growth potential. Find the experts. So you're always looking for people who are really good in their field. Identify people's strengths. Never met a man or woman with that it isn't superior in some way. So Ralph Waldo Emerson said that. Each month, meet with someone you admire and interview them. So John, when he first got started, he was a pastor of a church. And what he did is he looked up the top 100 people or top 25. I can't remember, maybe it was the top 25. And literally called, I mean, this is before the internet and everything else, called each place and says, hey, you know, I'm new. I would like to, you know, get to know you. I would like to take you out to lunch and pay you for your time, because I know time is money. Pay you for your time. And what he did is he focused all of his family trips around going to see these people and interview these people. And a lot of people would be like, well, that sucks for his family, because, you know, now he's taking away time that he could have been relaxing and doing this. But, you know, over a period of the next 15 years, he became the #1 growing pastor, growing church, growing business, really, in the United States. So was it worth it? Yes, because now his family gets to, you know, in later years, gets to do everything with everybody and meet every famous person in the world. So a lot of times I think we forget to, if we want to go up, we have to give up. So identify people's strengths. 5, ask questions. You cannot have growth without change. Hi, Shamala. So here's some questions to ask yourself to kind of figure it out. How open were you to learning from others? And how open are you to learning from people of different cultures, people of different race, people of different gender? You know, you can learn something from everybody. And being that I've played soccer, you know, I got to meet a bunch of people with different backgrounds, foreign, you know, even different religions. Hey, that's a different way to look at it. Doesn't mean you have to believe what they believe. Doesn't mean you have to, you know, switch sides politically. But I talk to people from different backgrounds, different political just to kind of get their input. And I think I said this on the show the other day. You know, I grew up, one family was ultra right, one family was ultra left, one family was Christian, one family was Jewish. And then we had the Catholic religion thrown in there because of relatives and everything. So I got to kind of, in the Lutheran, and we got to see that, you know, the different things. And one of my friends growing up was Muslim. So I got to kind of see that perspective, although he wasn't practicing. You know, that was his background, so we asked questions. My roommate in college was from Turkey, was Muslim. So it's, you know, you just get to see all these different perspectives on things. Not good or bad, not right or wrong, just different way to look at things. So you have to get to a point where you can kind of, you know, talk to everybody, have a conversation with everybody, learn something from everybody. But are you open? Are you open to learn and strategically learn? So this is really different. It's one thing to read a book. I have a bunch of people like, well, isn't it okay that I just listen to the audio of the book? Well, yeah, but there's something you're missing. The missing piece is you don't have to focus the same way when you just listen. If you can't, I mean, and I've just found this to be true, it's very difficult if you can't sit down and read. If you can't sit down and read the book because of focus, because that's usually what it is. I mean, now people have learning disabilities and, you know, sometimes it's dyslexia where they switch stuff around. Sometimes it's laziness. You know, in my case, I kind of said, oh, I've got this, oh, I've got that. And the reality is I just didn't want to take the time to focus. Because if you have ADHD, and if you're, you know, well, I was going to say the same thing, hyper, and have full of it, like, to focus on that made me stop and slow down. And because I couldn't, I never comprehended anything I read. Because my mind was always, I'd read one word, and because my reading wasn't fast enough, my mind would jump to something else, and then I'd be off the subject. So what I realized by not only reading, but also listening to some programs, and my thing is if you're going to listen to something, and I've just found this to be true. Gabby, how are you? If you're gonna read something and then you're gonna go listen to something, if you can watch the speaker as they talk, you'll pick it up differently than if you just listen to it. The reason being is you will pick up some of their gestures and not just the audio itself. I found that that's very helpful. I was listening to Jim Rohn last night. How to Have the Best Year of Your Life. It's like a 4.5-hour program that he did in 1981, I want to say, out in, was he in Texas? Yeah, he was in Texas at the time. So his gestures and his movement, how he pauses and then kind of, you know, moves, walks, it grabs attention. So if you want to get good, you know, people are like, wow, you know, how do these people get so good at, you know, speaking and talking? They watched other people who were good at it. They just didn't wake up one day and were good at it. Do you have key people to mentor you in each area? You know, I had to find people. Now, most of the time I found people online. Why? Because I live in Indiana. You know, there's not a hell of a lot of people here that I want to be mentored by. So what I did is I looked online and I found people like Gary Vaynerchuk that I could watch every day because he was basically putting out more content than anybody else. And I could watch him every day and see what he was doing. Then I bought his books. And I read what he had to say, and I read his articles of what his thoughts were. And what that did is that started bringing these different things up of what's going on. So, how good are you at asking questions when you're meeting somebody new? What are those questions you ask and why? So, when you're going to interview somebody, there's usually there's certain things you want to find out. You want to find out friendly and family. You want to find out occupation, what their background is, how they got there. I like to ask why you chose. Why did you choose that profession? Generally, I found a couple different things. Either they always did what they wanted to do because their family kind of, you know, was doing it, and they're like, oh, I've always wanted to do what my family did, and I liked it. Or I would say at least half of people are like, well, I do it because I accidentally called or I accidentally ran into somebody. You know, it was never in the plans. And then some people, you know, it necessarily wasn't family. It was kind of strategic that they got in and they tried a bunch of different things and then they figured out what they wanted to do. So, what are those questions you ask? So the last part is when I do an agent profile. So this is for if you're recruiting people and you have other people recruiting people, and then you're calling those people that you don't know that are on your team. How do you build rapport and figure everything out? And there's a formula for it called FORM, F-O-R-M. F stands for friendly or family. You know, hey, how's your day going? And then it goes into, you know, the family. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Who were you closest to? You know, what was the family dynamic like? Who were you closest to? Did you move? You know, what's your background? What do you do? You want to ask those questions. You want to get to know people, who they are. From there, you go kind of down to the next level, and you'll ask, well, you know, what did you like doing in school? You know, where did you think you're going to go? How was school? I found so much about people's like background self-esteem was developed, you know, during that, you know, kind of from 7 on. So it's like your school years, you know, because about 7 you're in school. I don't know if that's 1st or 2nd grade. And then kind of from there you start developing not only logic and reason, but you start developing, you know, relationships right around 14. 14, you start developing the emotional side, like how you react to things. And if you've seen something over and over again from your family, what happens is later you react that way. I reacted badly so many times because that whole dynamic from 7, I think my parents were divorced at 5 and my dad just was gone and just not in the picture for a while. And I kind of don't remember a lot of things. I mean, there was a lot of damage probably between like 5 and 10 because I can't, I mean, when people are like, well, what was your childhood like? There's a lot of stuff I cannot, like, completely blocked, can't remember. When I met with somebody who was like a deep psychologist, and now it's crazy because I have some clients that are psychologists and we've talked about this. They're like, yeah, usually there's trauma, there's some serious damage that's happened if that's the case. I'm like, yeah. So, and you have to kind of, once you read some of this and once you read some of these books, you'll meet people. And now I see it just like that. I mean, like, I can talk to somebody for 5 minutes and I'm like, there is some damage here that is, you know, deep. It's bad. You can tell by how people react, answer questions, self-esteem, all that different stuff. And I take it differently now than I would have 10 years ago. And I still mess things up. So it's just something that happens. So from family and getting to know somebody there and how they answer the questions and what's going on, then we go into occupation. You know, what do you do? What do you choose? Why do you choose it? What did you like best? What did you like least? By asking those questions, and look, this is something you can do to build any friendship with anybody. Like, this isn't just business. Like, I've used this and gotten to know friends of mine because I never was taught the right questions to ask. Like, who the hell teaches the right question? Hey, if you want to build a great friendship, these are the questions to ask. Who's teaching that? Nobody. You don't learn it in school. And you may learn it from family if your family talks to you. But if your family was like my family that didn't say shit or just watch TV the whole time, I mean, you're kind of clueless. You're gonna make it up as you go. Maybe your friends will teach you how to do it. So from there, you kind of move from occupation and knowing about that to recreation. Like, what do you like doing? Who are you? Deborah, Michael, how are you? You move from there to from occupation to recreation. What do you like to do for fun? What do you like to do with your time when you're not there? I ask questions like, what television shows do you like? What movies did you grow up? Like, what genre? And I'm also trying to figure out, I mean, I know by the time I get to this section where their personality sits by how they're answering their questions, the speed at which they answer the questions, the specific words they're using. You can just kind of go around the DISC circle if you're familiar with DISC personality profiling. You can go around the circle and I'm just like, it's categorizing in my brain. Okay, they've said this. These are all traits of this personality. So I kind of am getting that's probably who this dominant personality is. So now I know how they're processing things and how they're looking at things and how they're viewing things and how they're questioning things. But I get recreation, what do you do with your time? What'd you do growing up? Hey, did you transfer? And a lot of times athletics from high school, things they did in high school, sometimes they didn't do anything in high school, so now they're into all kinds of stuff because they just want to experience life. Is it really social, the activities they do? Is it really isolated, the activities that they do? That'll kind of give away, again, personality. And then you get down to the message. That's when you're actually pitching whatever you do. But in my agent profile, we get to kind of the message. The message is, hey, the goal here was to get to know you and get you started so you know some of the basics. But I have 5 questions for you. We've gone over these questions before. What do you think? Now this is not me telling them. This is me asking them. And I evaluate what, Iman, how are you? So the very first question is strengths. What do you think your strengths are? What do you think you're good at? Now, what's funny to me, and what's interesting is you can always tell somebody's self-esteem based on asking these 2 questions. 1, what are your strengths? People will have a hard time coming up with this. Aaron, what's going on? Hopefully the outdoor beach was awesome yesterday. Looked like yoga outside was much, much better than indoors for 17 months or whatever we've been. I mean, it's 17, 18 weeks. Feel like, supreme isolation. So what are your strengths? That's one of the questions I always ask. What are your strengths? And it depends on, or what I find is in self-esteem, people will come up with a short list and they'll really pause trying to figure out, well, what are my strengths? Well, people say that I'm good at, as soon as I hear it, well, people say that I'm good at, so you're not confident that you're good at, but it's what people say, or this is what I like. Then when I ask, well, what are your weaknesses, you get to also find out where are they at self-esteem wise, because if they're listing like 25 weaknesses, and I've always found this to be true, people are able to come up with weaknesses so much faster than their strengths. Now, is that good or bad? I'm not really sure if it's a good or bad thing, but I know I'm messed up. I've got a list of stuff that I'm messed up, but like, what are you good at? People have a hard time coming up with that. So you can kind of gauge where they're at self-esteem wise. Like, how much are they willing to reveal? If they're willing to reveal, oh my God, I'm bad at this, honesty is good. But my point is you're trying to figure out what their personality is and the dynamic, because by asking these questions, you can relate, you can train, you can help people more if you know where they're coming from and what their background is. So strengths and weaknesses. The next question is where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? This is a question that gets people to project the future. Most people either live in the present or they live in the past. Depressed people almost always live in the past. And what I mean by live in the past is every single thought, every single thing is based on what they did before and why it didn't work, or it's like, this is psychologists have told me this. I'm not a psychologist, but I've also found this to be true. The people that are depressed will live in the past and they'll talk about the past. Well, this happened and, I made this bad decision and that bad decision. Well, where do you want to be in 2 to 5 years? Well, I've never even looked that damn direction. So it'd be a good time to start looking in an opposite direction. Where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years? Starts building a mental image of the direction you're going. And you'll find that people who have good self-esteem and people who also have goals, dreams, and really want something to happen, the further out you see, and this is, again, psychology, read this in the book, the further out you see, usually the more money you make. So for those of you who are wondering, what is the secret? What is the trick? Why is it I can't? If you're living present day only, which is basically circumstance based, you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with, you have to get to a point where you look out further. The further you can look out, 10 years, 20 years. They said that, some of the wealthiest people in the world are not talking about when they're alive, they're talking about long after they're gone, this is what's going to happen. That's far out, right? The scientist, and he's passed now, but he wrote The Secret of the Universe. Lost his voice. He had muscular dystrophy. He's passed away, and now I cannot remember his name. Somebody will remember who I'm talking about.
If you know him, put him in the comments.
Yeah. I know that's a horrible description. He was on The Big Bang Theory. Sheldon loved him. Stephen Hawking. Oh
yes.
my gosh. So you don't have to be super smart, but you do have to remember who the smart people are. So Stephen Hawking was actually having a lot of conversations about 1,000 years from now. You know, you talk about somebody who's intellectually super smart. I mean, one of the most brilliant minds, they said, in the world, was able to create kind of his own language using the blinks of his eye and kind of like a Morse code to be able to create, and through the blinking of the eye and triggering a computer to track it, he was able to actually write out all of his messages, and then the computer kind of said everything else. Brilliant, awesome, unfortunate, passed away, one of the most brilliant minds in the world. My point to all that is the questions you ask, the further you can actually see out, the better off. So 2 to 5 years. The next question is, I forgot what it was. What motivates you? What motivates you? What do you think motivates you? And see if it's congruent with the rest of the stuff on the list. A lot of times people are like, oh, money motivates me, but they're not really interested in money anywhere else in the questionnaire. So I'm like, okay, there's an incongruency here. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if they're telling me that because their self-esteem says, hey, maybe that will be something that they like, so I'll like it too. It's just different for everybody. But what motivates you? And then last on the list is, what's the most important thing in your life right now? Right now, what's the most important thing in your life? And you find that, and what that profile does at the end, those questions, is it gives you an idea of connection, where to go, where you can take somebody, how much they're willing to do. Because if they're not expecting much, and they're not thinking further out, and they're not really, you can tell their self-esteem isn't there, you can't talk big picture to them because they can't see tomorrow. You can only go this far. But if they are big picture and they do say things, you can kind of show them more of where we're going, and then say, okay, the first goal is this, how fast can we accomplish it? But watch this, the goal, like if you're getting people started in business, the goal for each person is exactly the same to get started. It's just how fast they're going to accomplish it. We have people doing it in 24 hours. We have people doing it the first day. We have people who are taking 10 years to do this. It doesn't matter how fast you do it. It does money-wise, and it does business-wise, but it's like you can accomplish at your own speed. I'm not here to push you to do anything, because there's just so many people out there. I'm just here to help you move to the next level. And everybody's business is different. Everybody's structure is different, so you kind of have to look into, those different things. But once you understand it, you kind of know where you're going. You can set things up to be like, okay, this is like mission 1, mission 2, mission 3, mission 4, and you kind of set them up incrementally. No matter if somebody is far out thinking and they're real fast and they get it, you still have to go from mission 1 to get to mission 2. You're just going to go much faster, and you might be able to say, hey, look, mission 1 is this, mission 2 is this. Some people, you might be able to describe the first 3. Some people, if they have experience in the industry, you might be able to explain the first 5 levels of what to do and get there, because they understand the concept. Therefore, their brain isn't wrapped around, there's a lot of moving pieces here. I need to figure out what those moving pieces, if they know the moving pieces mean, they know contact, they know invite, they know setting appointment, they know presentation, they know follow-up, they know third party, they know, events, they kind of already know that, then you can move people through this much, much faster. So, with that being said, I'm getting text messages from like 4 or 5 people, and I just looked, and it's time. So, we appreciate everybody for being on. Thank you. Hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully it was worthy. And what else?
If you guys would like the notes, we're taking notes on each chapter for these books. So if you would like those notes, we can email them to you, and I'm going to put a link in the comments below so that way you could go subscribe and get those. And also, we do have a YouTube channel, and I do apologize. The YouTube channel is a little bit behind because YouTube decided it didn't want to download my videos for a couple of days. So if you notice that they're a little behind, that is the reason why. I plan on catching that up at some point today, so those will be back up. But if you'd like to go follow us there so you could go back to some old books that we've already gone through, you could do that. So with that, we're going to go get some work done, make some money, and we will see you tomorrow.